Jets still looking for their first down of the game. Quick throw. Intercepted! Van Ginkel! Down the sideline! Touchdown! Another pick six for Andrew Van Ginkel. And the Vikings take a 2-score lead.
And this is the challenge of the walk-up defense from the Minnesota Vikings. They bring everybody up to the line of scrimmage, and you have no idea who's coming and who's dropping. So one of the answers is the quick throw, what we call the hot throw. Aaron's trying to do that right here, and Van Ginkel just pops out from that walked-up position. He's standing right there. It's hard to see as a quarterback, and then somebody's just got to get him down on the sideline. I know all about that.
63-yard pick six for Mr. Pick Six. 4 career interceptions for Andrew Van Ginkel now, 3 of them taken to the house, including 2 this year. So the Jets take one away, but give one back, and they're down by 10.
Week 5, New York Jets versus Minnesota Vikings was a very memorable game. Overseas in London in the morning, Sam Darnold beats his old team, redemption arc. The head coach got fired the next day. Whole big thing. The Minnesota Vikings are now 5-0. Defensive coordinator Brian Flores in a redemption arc of his own. It's his defense that has flummoxed quarterbacks all year long with complex schemes and an eclectic group of football players. Going up against 20-year veteran, future Hall of Fame quarterback Aaron Rodgers was a unique test for this funky defense, and they dominated. Football is better when the Minnesota Vikings have a great defense. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just one of those teams, the jersey, it just feels right. Steelers, Bears, Vikings. When they have good defenses, everything is just in the world. To figure out how the Vikings defense has been so difficult for quarterbacks to play against, I looked at all Vikings pressures that resulted in an unsuccessful passing attempt in Week 5. Successful doesn't just include incompletions. Any play that gains at least 40% of the yards required on first down, 60% of the yards required on second down, or 100% of the yards on third and fourth down are successful plays. So anything less than that is an unsuccessful play. That's using Pro Football References definition. The sample of plays with pressure came from NFL Next Gen Stats. This sample does not directly include the Andrew Van Ginkel pick six because it wasn't actually counted as a pressure drop back, but I believe Rodgers was anticipating pressure, and that's why he made that throw. So to understand how this interception happened, I wanted to look at how the Vikings defense is achieving pressure. This sample of pressures that resulted in an unsuccessful passing attempt includes 8 incompletions, 3 sacks, and 2 short checkdowns. This represents 13 of Rodgers' 19 pressured dropbacks. The other 6 throws were pretty good and included a touchdown, but Rodgers' 3.1 yards per attempt and 42.9 completion rate under pressure were both 7th lowest among quarterbacks in Week 5, and his numbers without pressure were also not very good. This defense gave him fits. Starting out with some strong analysis, cover ? I couldn't decide if this was cover 3 or cover 4 based on how the safeties were moving. I think if your cover 3 looks like cover 4, you're doing something right. They load 7 in the box and send 5. I stick to the terms cover 0, cover 1, 2, 3, 4, and then label some as split safety coverage, which is essentially when I can't tell if it's cover 2 or cover 4. but anytime I use any of those three terms, cover 2, 4, or split safety coverage, it could be any mix of half and quarter coverage on those plays. There's so much disguise that happens and so much more detail that can occur on these coverages. I'm not a coach. I don't have meaningful playing experience. I'm just here learning along with you, appreciating football. This next pressure comes from a 0-5-6 personnel group. This is a rapidly evolving trend in modern NFL defense, is these wacky nickel, dime, and quarter personnel groups, subbing off linemen for linebackers and safeties. You don't know who's going to rush, you don't know who's going to drop. You're able to not only, send very exotic blitzes, but you're able to simulate pressure and achieve these split safety zone shells, these structures, with loaded boxes, seven guys on the line. In this case, this is cover 0. We're lining guys up. We're showing our hand, and we're betting that we can get to you quicker than you can get the ball out. And this is a good example of the New York Jets just not really having a plan for the blitz. Cover 0 has been Brian Flores' strength for a while, going back to, again, New England, but also his days head coaching in Miami, playing sticks coverage with your defensive backs, that off-man technique, as opposed to your traditional bump and run. Play 3 looks very convincingly like a cover 1 on pre-snap. They load the box with 8, but then they only send 3 and drop into a Tampa 2. Another very interesting and impressive part of this particular play call is number 0, Ivan Pace Jr. He rushes a lot. They send him all the time. He drops into the deep middle in this Tampa 2 scheme. Shows you the versatility and range that some of these linebackers have. It's a very eclectic group of players. Another one of my notes here on this play and others is I don't think play action makes a lot of sense against this defense. Turning your back to a defense that's changing the pre-snap and post-snap appearance at such a drastic and rapid manner, it's not a good idea to take your eyes off of that defense, turn back around and look at a completely different picture than you did before. They load 6 and they rush 4, but not the 4 that you would expect. Again, it's 0 rushing and Van Ginkel, number 43, dropping, and this 4-man rush applies pressure. Some guys start high and step into deep zones. Some guys start low and drop deep into those high zones. They pick up and transfer these route combinations with ease. It's very seamless and smooth. Cover 2 man to mix things up. This time it's more of a bump and run technique, and we have a TE stunt to apply pressure with that 4-man rush. They load 7 in the box and they send 4, but if you notice how that defensive front is aligned, they are overloading the right side of that offensive line. So you're sending 4, but it's a simulated pressure because you don't know where those 4 are coming from, and you're creating some one-on-ones on that right side of the line. When the Vikings are faced with these unbalanced 3-by-2 formations, they tend to leave that weak side of the formation pretty lightly covered. They have this extra hook curl defender and a flat defender on that same strong side of the field, and the 2 off-ball linebackers that are playing that hook curl zone end up protecting the seam, carrying the seam all the way up. So there are spaces that are being left open in the middle of the field and sometimes in the flat, but you just never know which one of those little middle intermediate spaces is going to be open or closed. This is another split safety coverage out of Amoeba personnel, 6 in the box. They rush 4. The play just never has a chance. This is a have your cake and eat it too type of defense, where we're able to prevent explosive plays with deep split safety shells while also applying pressure, not just with really good pass rushers, but with confusing pressure packages with these loaded box, ambiguous fronts. And by the way, we're looking at passing attempts. They also stop the run at a league-leading rate because they're loading the box, they're fitting every one of these run gaps on the line of scrimmage while also getting into those split safety shells. Typically with defensive schemes, there are trade-offs, and you choose which risks you want to take versus others. And this one, every defense is going to have its weakness. There probably are ways to beat this defense. As of right now, it's not clear what that is, and regardless of what those weaknesses might be, I think this is just a optimal way of playing defense in the modern NFL when you're able to achieve so many goals in one scheme. I could see how other defenses are going to want to build based on this model. They show 7 and send 5. I have this labeled as split safety. Looking at this, once again, I think I might have gotten fooled. Maybe this is a cover 1 robber where you got a deep middle and then an intermediate middle. Harrison Smith is right place, right time on this play. That's a pretty frequent theme. If you want to just roll all these playbacks and watch Harrison Smith play safety, I would definitely recommend that. I also find it interesting how these hook curl linebackers get into position on every play. They show like they're covering one side of the middle field and then rotate late to the other, or they're walked up to the line of scrimmage and they drop out. You don't know which one is dropping out and to where they're dropping out. Dime personnel with 5 linebackers on the field. They load the box with 6 and send 4. This is cover 2 man. And another key player on this defense is number 58, Jonathan Grenard. One way to apply pressure is to send blitzes, overwhelm them with numbers, or confuse them, overwhelm them on one side of the line, or just catch them by surprise. The other way to apply pressure is just to have the guys. It's X's and O's, but it's also Jimmy's and Joe's. Jonathan Grenard gets off the ball. This is elite stuff. I mean, I knew Jonathan Grenard was good, but his explosion on the snap here is overwhelming. He uses his hands, puts this offensive tackle on skates, blows up the play. When you have a guy like Jonathan Grenard, you can rush with 4 and get to the quarterback, especially when you're mixing up who out of the guys in the box, which 4 are coming, which 7 are dropping. This is another example of why play action seems like a bad idea against this defense. You're turning your back to the defense on a crucial time frame. When the linebackers rush, some of them drop. Safeties are frequently rotating late from cover 1 and cover 3 structures into cover 2 or cover 4. And Harrison Smith could be anywhere on the field. He's one of those players, you want to see him before you throw the ball. And you're turning your back to the defense for a second. I'd recommend keeping your quarterback's eyes on the defense. Again, unbalanced formation, a zone coverage structure with only 1 flat defender, 2 hook curl defenders that are kind of rotating late in their own way, another 4-man rush with an overloaded unilateral front, 6 in the box, 4 rush. This is cover 2 man. Van Ginkel rushes. That's the linebacker who's been dropping a lot. So just to see why it does get confusing, he doesn't drop all the time. He also rushes. Rodgers tries to throw it up to Mike Williams. This Jets offense just doesn't have good man beaters. 2-man's pretty difficult, but even against the cover 0 stuff, they just don't have the tools for it. Throwing it up to Mike Williams is one kind of solution. I think teams with wide receivers that overpower man coverage with raw speed and power, the true throw it up guys, DK Metcalf, Mike Evans, guys in Cincinnati, those teams might pose a unique challenge to this Vikings defense. Again, against 2-man, you don't have much of an opportunity. These corners are playing well too. If I'm an offensive coordinator, those aren't the guys who are keeping me up at night. It's the defensive front. But if I am going to challenge part of this defense, it's those corners, these man coverage matchups. Jets did a poor job of anticipating those matchups. Also, where's the pre-snap motion? The formations are bland. This Jets offense doesn't have much going for it. This is another example of you have cover 0 look, sticks coverage, off man. This is 1st and 10. An out route would work really well here when you have an inside leveraged cornerback that's also lined up off the line of scrimmage. Speed out is going to work well here. Wilson tries to improvise a double move. Don't they, I don't know, have one of those in their playbook? I don't need to elaborate too much on this offensive play calling, but this is the Flores defense for you. Is they have a lot of exotic and forward-thinking stuff, but at his roots, he's the sort of guy who's going to show his cards and beat you anyway. And this is a 1st and 10. This is usually a sort of play call for 3rd and 10 plus, 3rd and long. The time on the clock and the score and everything situation, this just goes to show Brian Flores' personality. Like, he goes for the throat. And it's this cover 0 with the Van Ginkel dropping into hook zone that got Rodgers in the first quarter. It also gets them on the last drive of the game. Last play of the sample, they load with 5, send 4. They're showing cover 2 here, and it looks like cover 2 zone, not just because of the safeties, but because of the positioning of this outside corner. Playing with so much outside leverage makes it appear like they're playing some sort of zone coverage, but just before the snap, he gets into position. if you look back through some of the other plays in this sample, you'll see the cornerbacks playing some mind games with their own sort of late rotations, showing different leverages, so you don't know if they're playing man or zone. That, I think, is one of the opportunities in this in this defense to take advantage of. Rodgers scored before the end of the first half by increasing the tempo and getting snaps off early in the play clock, not allowing them to do late rotations and switch out personnel. So he took advantage of some looks that he liked, and I think if they have some risky leverage alignments, whether they're playing man coverage but they're lined up with some outside leverage, you got to take advantage of those with a sharp in-breaker. Otherwise, not a ton of space to work with in this offense unless you are anticipating it better than they are in terms of middle field windows. So going back to that Van Ginkel interception, it's that 0-5-6 personnel, Amoeba package, loading 7 in the box, sending 6, this cover 0 with the unpredictable hook drop from Van Ginkel. And this video wouldn't make much sense without taking a second to talk about this player. I mean, Andrew Van Ginkel, man. What's going on? 3 career pick 6s as an edge rusher. What's happening? Are there other players like this around the league? He gives them such a unique and valuable versatility. Where did this guy come from? And he's not the only one. There are guys all around this defense that contribute in their niche, and I think that adds to the Belichick of it all. Nickel and dime packages that are stuffing the run and getting after the quarterback and preventing explosive plays. This is a deadly defense. I've talked about some of my ideas for beating the Vikings. I've talked about just having really good wide receivers would help, I believe. Some better man coverage beating concepts when it is pretty clear that they're going to be playing man coverage. Maybe with enough time and enough tape, offenses, the best quarterbacks and the best coordinators or offensive play callers in the league might be able to start anticipating these middle field windows. Playing armchair quarterback here, I would lead with the assumption that number 0 is rushing and number 43 is dropping. That's their tendencies that follow from their unique skill sets, and if they do surprise you, at least you're attacking one of the less experienced linebackers on the field in coverage, Pace Jr. rather than Van Ginkel. If they keep beating you with maximum variance, then I think we need to rethink the linebacker position, if not defensive football in its entirety. Another key to beating the Vikings, these are all pretty obvious, but Sam Darnold is taking risks on the offensive side of the ball. He's been playing very good football recently, but he will eventually make a costly mistake only if you take advantage of the opportunity, catch those interceptions, pick up those fumbles. Field position, a good kick or punt return, or get a good punt or kickoff strategy. If you can turn a couple short fields into red zone appearances, they aren't the most efficient red zone defense. I've noticed statistically and by the eye test, once you get into that short field, you can start poking some holes in this defense. Another criticism, I guess you could say, is these defensive fronts, while they do load the boxes and fit all the gaps, these are some smaller bodies. I mean, it's a lot of linebackers on the field, not a lot of linemen. They do have some linemen, some nose tackles and such, but teams that are comfortable with matching bodies in the box and just out muscling them. Lions, Ravens, maybe the Cardinals. And if you go look back at my Drew Petzing video, how they attack defenses with man blocking principles, heavy personnel groups, and then with the explosive passing game out of 2 and 3 tight end sets, that could be a strategy against this sort of defense. And looking at their schedule, it does heat up with some of those teams, especially the Lions. I think that's the team. If they beat the Lions, then oh man, we really got to start sounding the alarms about this Vikings defense, because as I mentioned, they're gonna fight toe to toe with you in that box. They're fine with running the ball into those loaded boxes, taking advantage of 4th down opportunities, and like really using momentum when it's there. I think that's key. Like a Jared Goff attacking the middle of the field, like they have a lot of matchup advantages. I think it is a favorable matchup for the Lions. Rams, you could say some similar things. Matthew Stafford, of all quarterbacks, might be able to see the weaknesses in these zone coverages and anticipate some of those exotic dropbacks, as well as like some of their man blocking principles and their big offensive line. Maybe they can get after it, run against these loaded boxes because they're nickel and dime personnel. Even the Colts can do some of that stuff. The Bears are going to take advantage of those turnover, those takeaway opportunities, and they're also a very good special team as well. So they might be able to win by net positive in all 3 phases. Cardinals are on their matchup on their schedule. One thing I did mention earlier was also tempo. When you increase the tempo on this defense, I think you take a little bit away from them. The Falcons are on their schedule, and they've been messing with tempo quite a bit, going fast in various atypical, unorthodox situations, and just throwing the ball a lot. And Mike McDonald and the Seahawks, they got plenty of experience running this Amoeba defense. Mike McDonald has his own sort of Amoeba defense, at least that he ran in Baltimore. So if anyone understands Brian Flores, he might be the only one. This Vikings team in general is here to stay. They have an outstanding coaching staff, and they're still building in terms of their player talent. I mean, they're getting this done with some really young guys, some mid-market veteran additions that will be there for a little while but not long term. But they don't have too many blue chip superstar type of talents outside of Justin Jefferson. Christian Darrisaw, Harrison Smith deserves tons of respect, and Jonathan Grenard as well. But there's a lot of room to grow here. There's a lot more potential if you put better Jimmys and Joes into this scheme. The X's and O's are doing a lot of work on their own here. If you keep adding more and more talented players onto this team, this could become the best team of football. They are undefeated, and this isn't even, I don't think this really comes close to their potential. This was not supposed to be this great of a team. They're outperforming expectations, and I think expectations should only continue to climb and climb for this team. Brian Flores, Minnesota Vikings. Aaron Rodgers got eaten by a purple amoeba in London, England. It was pretty weird. A coach got fired. That's the story.